Hi, fellas. Thanks for coming. We got only 3 or 4 people signed up in the Facebook, but a lot of you guys showed up. Appreciate your time. So in essence of time, let's roll on. And my name is Wazenn. I'm the founder of the nonprofit organization. And we have Lyrics Wong from the Department of Labor. We got Richard Manning from Manning and Gordon. This is Assistant Liz Pavan. You will have, that's Catherine Ventura from the United States Immigration Services. And the speakers will, you are here for them and they are here for you, so I won't take much of your time. But before we get started with Department of Labor, I got to ask 3 things from you. Number 1, testimonial. The foundation is built on your testimonials. Students want to hear from students. They don't want to hear from me or them. They want to know how you felt about the event, or was it useful, or did we answer all your questions? And also, I always tell the students who come to this event that the speakers are not gone after this event. It's not like you are not going to meet them. You can always go back to them if you get in any trouble whatsoever. And that's the whole point, that it's not like in university, you are here, we take care of you until you graduate, and after you graduate, we don't give a shit. No, we will, and you can't come back to us. And if you do, on an essence, the nonprofit doesn't provide any help. I don't answer any questions. They do. They are the ones who are investing their time answering your problems. But the foundation do provide a platform for you guys to access. So if you do get help post-graduation or 2 months or 6 months later, drop me an email and we'll just get your feedback. Once again, that's testimonials. What that tells other people is, okay, people are benefiting, and we are not just saying nice things to sound nice, but you folks are hearing from the government. 2, volunteers. I'm looking for, the foundation is looking for some volunteers. I started this foundation as a hobby. I don't want to pay Uncle Sam everything. I want to use my tax money doing what I want to do. So I thought I would start a foundation and start doing what I like to do. Next thing you know, I'm in 4 states, and I'm only in 4 states because I'm busy. The demand is more. And if you choose to contribute to the foundation, you have to look into it and see if it's really going to benefit. Because as an international student, the best volunteer since we started 3 years is right here. I rinse it a day. Think about this for a second. Just put everything down and think. You are an international student. And she's a communication major. How many communication majors have walked outside of the university? And she has access to me and all my speakers, Department of Labor, United States Immigration Services, Timothy Hughes, who's not here, from Fraud Detection and National Security, Kristen Smith. And these are the people she knows outside. And she has marketed this event before. She has worked with us for 2 years. This is all in addition to what she has studied. Now, how many people will have so many references more than your own classmates, more than your own professors to talk about? Who else can tell you you are a great person more than the people you just know personally? That is marketability as an international student. So if you wish to volunteer, then you have to see how this is going to help you, and I wouldn't know that. And if you tell me that, then we will build up on it and see, how it's going to help you. 3, the Vine also runs a second program, which I'm really looking forward to kickstart this year. It's called WBA World Beyond America. That I want students from America who's going outside to get the access that you are having. The same thing, international labor and immigration attorneys and police officers from a different country. So these kids should be able to have access to the law enforcement in a different country that they are willing to go and get the education from. So if you know somebody who can help us, because students like to hear from students, and please let me or Irene know, and we could really use your help. With that being said, here's Paul.
Hello everyone. How's everybody doing today? 5 o'clock, right? So my name is Lourdes Barr, and I'm with the U.S. Department of Labor Wage and Hour. And what we do is we enforce many laws, the minimum wage, the overtime, the child labor. We enforce the Migrant Seasonal Protection Act. We enforce the government contracts, in addition to the H-1B, H-2A visas. So here we are today to talk about the H-1B visa, and more specifically, what are your rights and what are the violations that an employer can have if you come in on an H-1B visa. When you're coming in on a special visa like that, you are somewhat vulnerable. They are supposed to take care of you, but sometimes they don't. So if you know your rights, then you're going to be able to be better protected to make sure that you can file a complaint with us, and we'll go into it and look into it. The complaints are confidential. So an employee can, we take complaints from a grieved party. That would be somebody that has been, hurt through the H-1B visa, from the State Department or from a third party that we think is a credible source. So those are the three people that are the three sources that we would take, that we would start an action on. And so as a H-1B visa recipient, you are really protected in a lot of ways, but also you have, like I said, some requirements as well. So I'm going to go through the list because I don't want to shortchange it or change the format of it. I've given the bind several fact sheets that are very, very beneficial, and hopefully if you guys give them his email, you can in fact email it over to you guys as an attachment, and it just kind of gives you a lot of good information about the Department of Labor and the enforcement of the H-1B visa. Okay? So let's talk about the program. So we have fact sheet 62. Now this one is, what is Wage and Hour Inspection Enforcement Authority under H-1B visa? And we are really the ones that enforce it. Yeah.
So guys, if you have any questions, stop us and ask. And you understand that Department of Labor is different from United States Immigration Services, all of you, right? You know what they do? Because once you get your H-1B visa, you start working, but your wage and hour, your H-1B pay stubs, or she will also talk about benching and so on and so forth, which you'll be interested to many folks. But that's what Department of Labor does, that you don't get discriminated as a foreign worker, and what your rights and what not, and can you speak up, or what an employer can and can't do. And I always say this is not a how to screw your employer session. So you got to take the right things to know what your rights are.
Yeah, so it goes both ways. I mean, you have rights, the employer has rights, and as long as everybody knows what the playing field is, then you're going to be protected, and knowledge is really power. So really, there's 16 categories of violations, and these can include, for us, a debarment, so that they don't get any more H-1B visa, recipients, and our CMP, civil money penalties is what we call them. So I'm going to name them to go through, and I kind of talk a little bit about them if it's, when we see something that's important. If anybody has any questions, please raise your hand, because I'm okay with you guys asking. So wage violations, failure to pay required wages. Number one thing, they need to pay you what's on your LCA, whatever the contract is, or basically the LCA is basically what's going to tell you what they need to pay you for the place that you're going to be working at. So they need to pay you that. Failure to offer equal benefits or equal eligibility of benefits. Misrepresentation of material facts. So in the LCA, they're going to have to write exactly where you're going to be working, what your rate of pay is. If that's inaccurate, that's misrepresentation of material facts. Failure of providing working conditions as required. Filed an LCA during a strike or lockout, so they can't ask for foreign workers when they're having a strike, basically. Failure to provide notice of filing of an LCA as required. Failure to accurately specify on the LCA. Failed to comply with displacement protections for U.S. workers. So they really have to advertise that there's a position 90 days before, 90 days before and after the date that they filed the petition to get the workers, okay? So they have to be actively recruiting U.S. workers, because truly, when you're getting in on an H-1B visa, you really are saying, the employer is saying that there's no local workers that can do this job, and an H-1B visa is a skilled visa. You're coming in with a special skill that the U.S. workers would not have. Failure to take good steps in recruitment, so they need to actively recruit local workers. Displacement of U.S. workers, so they truly can't displace the U.S. workers for an H-1B. So it's something that, would be on the employer side. Required or accepted payments of additional petition fees. They can't ask you to pay for any of the fees. Sometimes that happens in a roundabout way. They're going to ask you to pay for the visa. They're going to ask you to pay for some of the processing fees. That's illegal. That's a burden that the employer has to pay. Required or attempted to require penalty for seizing employment. So you have an LCA that says you're going to be working for such state to such state. They can't ask you to pay a penalty for getting another job or finishing. You don't like this employer. You want to get another H-1B visa sponsor. They can't penalize you for that. Discriminated against employee for protected conduct. So if you file a complaint with us, they can't discriminate against you. They can't retaliate. You're still working there. Failure to make available for examination the LCA and other documents. So the employer is required for the Department of Labor when we come in. It's what we call a public access file. So all your information is available and should be organized. It's not always organized, but it should be organized with the LCAs, with all the different ETA forms that are required, and also how they came up with the method of the method of pay for you guys. And also, as well, we look at the payroll and time records to make sure you guys are getting paid right if you're an H-1B visa. Failure to maintain documents as required. Failure to cooperate in an investigation, that's the employer. Failure to comply with provisions of subpart H&I. So then we go to fact sheet 62G. Okay, you want to say something?
Yeah, and everybody understood what LCA is? You all know what an LCA is? Okay, LCA is labor condition application.
Right.
That's what she's saying.
The acronyms that we use.
Yeah, and for your wage and hour, what that says is they have two types of pay, right?
There's a required, there's the prevailing wage is what they need to pay you. The required wage is what they need to pay you that's higher. And then there's the actual wage and the prevailing wage. So those are in your LCA.
So the actual wage is, let's say, when you were saying state by state, let's say you are hired in Florida, that will be a minimum wage requirement for an H-1B visa.
Every city.
Every
city has a different rate. So like if you're in New York City is going to be a higher rate than if you were in Buffalo.
So if they hire you here, then your LCA application will tell you, like your H-1B, you can get a copy of the LCA that you're going to pay. You need to get, but most of the companies they don't, but you can and you should. This will tell you this is what your pay is. But if you start working in Virginia, let's say if you guys are consulting or in a different business, and then not on a contract basis, not on a business trip, but your physical location, desk is changed from Florida to New York City, then it's not the same thing. And that's what she was explaining to you. That's why it's important for you to have the LCA and ask for it. And if they didn't give it, it's a public document, and you can always reach out to them. And also what she was saying about maintaining all the documents is, let's say your employer said, I will give you, or your schedule asks, then when Department of Labor goes in, they're not going to say, hey, Johnny said you didn't give his LCA. Let me look at Johnny's paper. No, that's not what they're going to do. They're going to look at everybody's paper. They're not even going to let him know that who filed the complaint. So, that's what she was explaining this whole thing.
But actually, the employer is required to give you all those forms because it is something that you need to know. So for your protection and your disclosure. So when we talked about the required wage. So sometimes it's whatever is the highest. So they'll do an analysis when they ask for this for you as an H-1B employee. They will have to come up with what are the different rates that are getting paid for that specific job. And depending on your skill level, that rate will increase. So sometimes an employer will say, well, you're at the lowest skill level of $20 an hour when you really have been doing this for 5, 10 years, for example. You really should be at a skill level of 5 at a much higher rate of maybe $30 an hour. So those are things that you want to look at when you're getting your LCAs and your I-129s, petitions for non-immigrant worker that are employee-specific with qualifications. So those are the ones that, but I think you guys are going to talk about that. The other thing that's very important that the employer, it's in fact sheet 62H, the H-1B workers cannot be asked to pay for certain things. And really, this is really, really, really important. 62G. Let me put it over. There's a lot, these are a lot of fact sheets. So 62G, 62H, sorry, is the one that's correct right there. Okay, so basically, they cannot ask you for a penalty for not completing your employment period. We went through that already. They can't ask for any part of training or processing fees imposed by Homeland Security to get the visa. They can't ask for any part of the statutory $500 fraud protection fee imposed by ISIS. Not ISIS. Sorry. USIS. That's what I mean by glasses. Okay, guys, I'm getting older here. And you guys are paying attention. Good. And any deductions from the employer for business expenses, to include attorney's fees, related filing fees for the LCA, filing the H-1B visa, forms, tools, equipment, travel expenses for the business. So those are all expenses that the employer has to incur. So they should not be asking you for that. And sometimes when you are an H-1B, and I've seen it when I've done my investigations, you are so anxious to get the job, come to the United States, and to have that opportunity to work in the United States at a really good rate of pay. You sometimes are like, oh, I don't care, I'll pay the attorney fee, I'll pay this, I'll pay that. No, this is really a burden that the employer has to pay, and you should not be asked to pay that. And I've seen it, and it's kind of sometimes hidden on the payroll records. You really, or the employee's asked to pay it back in cash, so that so there's no record of it. You guys need to know that that is something that the employer should pay, and should really run away from that, because it really sets the precedence. Once they start messing with that, then they start messing with your hours, then they start messing with your pay, and before you know it, you haven't been paid for all the hours that you worked, you haven't been paid for the other thing that's very important. As an H-1B employee, you can't be benched. And what does benched mean? If the employer doesn't have any work for you, they still have to pay you. Okay, so let's say you're in computers and your contract with your little project has ended. You know, you've already done this massive new thing and you're just kind of waiting for the next big thing. And the employer says, well, you know what? I'm kind of done right now. I don't have anything. I need you to take a vacation on you. No. This is really, if you're ready, willing, and able, and it's up to the employer has to pay you. So those are the things that are really important for you guys to know, because if you don't know, that's when you get kind of
because the bottom line is, this is a subtle way of trafficking. That's what they're doing, right? Your employer can't say that, oh, your project is over, you can go on vacation now until you come back. He or she can say that. And even if they do, what IBM or essentially big companies does is, if your contract is over with a particular client, they will try to find a new gig for 3 months. Until then, you sit in the IBM office, you still get paid. If they can't find it in 3 months, then IBM or Accenture will come and say, be done, which is fine. But that's not what every employer does, and those are the investigations, DOL handles, that first they stop paying you and then you're on vacation. And when she comes and asks, your employer will say, I don't know where Johnny is, he didn't call me, I don't know, maybe I'll give a bullshit number. And she can't reach Johnny too, and next thing you know, Johnny is vanished. And how much this impact will have, what the impact of this, think about it. You're going to a home country, back for a vacation for your marriage, your brother's marriage, anybody is sick or whatever it is. Then the visa officer, when you come back, is going to ask, hey, could you show me your pay stubs? And then you are showing a pay stub that's 6 months old or 3 months old, and you don't have a current pay stub. Now, he or she at the visa office is going to be confused why you don't have proper documents. And you can't tell them, my employer said, ask me to go on vacation, so I went. And that's why it's extremely critical to have the proper documents, and don't be scared. No one person can send you out of the country or have any control over you whatsoever.
The other thing that's also really important is sometimes when you're an H-1B recipient or visa holder, you are asked to sometimes do projects out of in different countries. In different cities. So we talked about that briefly for a moment. After 30 days, you need to get a new LCA. So let's say that you're there for 2 weeks. That's okay, they can pay you that rate that's on the LCA for Tampa, let's say. But let's say you're now at 60 days in New York, they need to then issue a new one that's specific for your job in that country, in that city, okay? So I think for the most part, that is the summary of what you have in H-1B. It's a great program. It does really bring a lot of very skilled people into the United States. But I personally have done investigations where I have seen some serious abuse on the end of the employer, where they have not, done the proper checks and balances. They haven't gotten their LCAs in check. They had people all over the place, and a lot of back wages were due for these individuals. But I've also seen employers that have tried really hard to do the right thing, and sometimes they make a little mistake, or here or there, and that's normal too. But you guys need to speak up and let us know if there is a problem, so that we can help you. Yes.
How does the H-1B1 visa actually work? Is it really like a lottery? And how does the chances differ if you have a master's or just a bachelor's?
Right, and so that might be better.
Catherine or Richard will answer.
They're part of the process. It's kind of funny because there's like several different agencies that work in the visa process. We're the enforcement portion of it. Everything that has to do with the application process, ETA reviews it, and they make a determination if it's correct or not. And then based on whatever they approve is what we enforce.
See, that question will be answered, I promise you.
Yeah.
But the reason that we're bringing Department of Labor here and Immigration Services and attorneys is for this reason. So you understand when you ask your employer, he or she says you're fired, now you can ask them, can they do that? I just asked for my LCA and you're asking me to get out, or what would I do? Should I leave the country or not? That's what you're trying to find out. Can anybody influence you or threaten you or scare you? Get the answer to that question before you leave this room. You got a question?
I had a question. Right now I'm in executive, so when the company I apply for is it before I graduate, can the company apply H-1B for a student who is in?
Okay, that would be, again, not a question for the Department of Labor, because we are enforcement.
That you're talking about.
But I think mostly the employer is petitioning for you, and it can be at any time. But I don't want to say the wrong
We'll
thing.
cover that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that will all be covered. Any other questions for Leo?
Yeah.
In terms of enforcement, is there a website specific link or specific?
Yes, great question. So our fact sheets at the end have a great website, which is over here, www.wageandhour.dol.gov. I know it's hard to see, but it's really easy. DOL, and then go to the wage and hour portion of the website. The DOL is huge. We have a lot of sub-agencies. So we're going to wage and hour, and then you want to then go to the H-1B, H-2A, and there's a whole section that we'll talk about. You'll see the Code of Federal Regulations, you'll see the fact sheets, and it will also say, there's also a place that you can file a complaint. When you file a complaint with the Department of Labor, we go through a set of questions, and they're really long questions, but we really try to get a good idea of what happened. And then usually the complaint has to go to the regional office, or whatever main office is. They review it, they decide if it's a credible source, if it's an aggrieved party, and then it comes back to the investigator. And sometimes it depends on the issue, because sometimes it's just not you that's been affected. Sometimes it's going to be the employer might have 200 H-1B employees. So it can take, sometimes it's really fast, sometimes it's really slow, depending on the investigation.
And these fact sheets will be your Facebook page, or I will give to Irene or Rosa, and she will send it to all of you. So, and these fact sheets are specific to H-1B, and that's what it is. You don't have to go and search and everything. And even if you have any problems, you can reach out to her or me. We're there.
Right, definitely.
Yeah, and my cards are here too.
All right, thank you so much.
Next is Richard.
By the way, I'm Rick Manny, and I'm going to try to answer those questions. Maybe I can start with that. What was the first question that somebody had? What was it?
How does the H-1B1, the application work? Is it to be a lottery, and what are the possibilities or chances regarding a master's?
The H-1B1 is not a, it's just an application. I'm going to answer your question too about when you can file it. If you're getting your master's degree, you can file on April 1st because all you need is a bachelor's degree or the equivalent work experience. So if you already have your bachelor's, you don't have to wait for your master's. If you don't have a bachelor's degree, you can't show that you have the equivalent by work experience, then you've got to wait. All right, so you have that bachelor's level.